Can you please tell us a little more about NeuroTrack, your product?
Sure. NeuroTrack is a technology that has the ability to diagnose Alzheimer's disease 3 to 4 years before symptoms appear.
And how does it work?
It's a computer-based visual cognitive test. And so the way it works is we seat a person in front of the computer. There's an infrared eye tracking device that sits atop the computer. And they look at a series of images. So they begin not being told anything but to look at the images on the screen. 2 images show up. They're the same image. They look at those images will stay up there for 30 seconds, the screen goes dark, and 2 more images come up. One of them is new, one of them is old. And we continue this sequencing of images for about 20 minutes. We then study the way this person has viewed these images, how much time they spend on the new image versus how much time they spend on the old image. Gather all of those data points and run it through our algorithms, and we're able to give a prognosis as to whether a person will develop Alzheimer's or not in the next 3 to 4 years.
So does the way that the participant views the images say something about memory, perhaps? Is that the connection?
It does. So there are 2 things that are going on here. One, it's a discovery that was made by one of our scientists, Dr. Stuart Silva, which is that by monitoring the way a person moves their eyes, we're able to detect all kinds of things that are going on in the brain, impairments that exist that might not and aren't detectable by even more invasive means. So we took that discovery and coupled it with a human being's innate preference for new things, for novelty. We married those concepts and designed a test around it, which does that. It's a memory test, but it digs deeper into things that are occurring in the hippocampus that are not visible to others by other means.
And what have you found when you tested this in participants?
So we ran a 4-year test that was funded by the NIH, and what we found was that on our test, which is scored 0 to 100, of those people who tested below 50%, 99.9% of them converted to Alzheimer's disease in the next 3 or 4 years. We also found that people who tested above 67, none of those people converted. So we think that there's just enormous potential to really create a significant impact in this area with our test.
And how does this compare to current options for diagnosis for Alzheimer's?
So the biggest issue with Alzheimer's disease is that you can't today diagnose it until clinical symptoms show up. So this is in the clinic with your physician, gathering all kinds of qualitative information, family history, stories from caregivers and family members about how a person has been behaving. They can also give some pen and paper tests. There are some computer-based tests that will confirm a diagnosis, but there is nothing on the market today that can diagnose before these symptoms show up.
Mm-hmm. And what about genetic tests? I know there are some genes that have been linked with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, there are some genetic tests. It shows a genetic mutation, so it's not a 100% diagnosis that you will get Alzheimer's disease.
I see. And once an individual has been diagnosed through your test, what are the next steps that they can take?
Well, there are a lot of things that you can do on the services side and on the education side in order to prepare for what is about to happen. And if you've experienced this, if you've had a family member who has suffered from Alzheimer's disease, you know that it is not something that simply affects the person with the disease. The entire families are impacted by this. And so you're seeing lots of couples who are being forced to convert their kids' college savings funds to long-term care funds, people who are having to leave their jobs in order to take care of their family members who's been diagnosed. So there's lots that you can do in terms of the planning side. On the therapy side, there's not so much. So drugs today, there are a number that are on the market that treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. And we know that if you get an early diagnosis, that if you take some of those drugs, they actually are more effective. But there's nothing on the market today that can prevent you from getting the disease or that can really significantly slow progression of the disease. And that's another really exciting area where we think our technology has the ability to be very impactful. It's helping the pharmaceutical companies test their drugs that are in the pipeline on people who are pre-symptomatic, but who we know will convert, and to really be able to test effectively.
Right. So is that the next step then? My next question was going to be, what's the future for NeuroTrack?
So the future we think is an exciting one in terms of really being able to help this group of people. And so one is working with pharmaceutical companies to help them develop a preventive drug, and that's a really big issue. Some of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, Eli Lilly, Pfizer, Merck, Johnson & Johnson, have been stymied over and over again, spending billions of dollars on failed drugs, simply because they can't populate their clinical trials with the right people. So we'd like to work with them to help them do just that. And then we plan to go directly to the consumer via the physician to help people get an earlier diagnosis so that they can begin taking some of these medications, and they can also plan appropriately for the disease.
And is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers?
Oh, just that, this is a disease that affects, 5.5 million people in the U.S. today. As the baby boomer population is aging, this is becoming a massive epidemic. I mean, it's what they refer to as the silver tsunami. The number of people who are going to be affected by Alzheimer's disease in the next 50 years is just extraordinary. And so we really do need to begin to focus on some of these technologies that can help bring the potential to better treat and meet the needs of these people.
Definitely, and that's very exciting to hear that there might actually be a test for Alzheimer's where you can find it before the symptoms show.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for your time and for being here and sharing with us today.
Thank you.